What is going on, guys? It is Connor, the co-host with the most, and welcome back to another episode of Clutch Crew Sports. Yes, you are listening to the correct podcast, and yes, this is Connor opening the episode. There is, for the first time in a long time, there's going to be no Zach in this episode, so I took the initiative to plan and write this episode. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. We're going to be talking about recapping the NBA draft. We did a mock draft last week, so we're going to see the results of that. Spoiler alert, we did really bad. But I'm pretty sure everyone else did really bad too. So
Thanks,
nothing too...
Toronto.
Yeah, really. So we're going to be recapping that. We're going to be looking at some winners and losers from the NBA draft. And we're also going to be looking at free agency, which just started today. And boy, oh boy, there's been a lot of moves already happening. There was probably like 6 moves that were made within the first 5 minutes. And I was like trying to keep up with everything. So yeah, we're going to be looking at that. Hopefully you guys enjoy it.
And what is going on, guys? This is Eric, your ranting co-host here. I definitely got to give Connor a shout out here. First of all, obviously for coming up with the episode and putting everything in the slides and stuff like that you're going to see. But I also got to give Connor a shout out for being like our version, the Clutch Crew Sports version of Woj today, because I was at work today, and once free agency started, this man was just hitting me up with updates on players that were re-signing with their teams or doing sign-in trades or signing with new teams or whatever. And it was kind of nice because it helped me get more information about the episode while I was working, which I wouldn't have got otherwise. So Connor, thank you for that. And just looking forward to bringing you guys a lot of NBA coverage tonight.
Yeah, it was certainly interesting. I thought to myself, during the NFL free agency, I was kind of like that because I had Shefty and Rap on like my notifications. So I was like, let me put Woj on my notifications so that way I can be up to date on all this stuff. So, but yeah, like I said, no Zach for this episode, so it's going to be a little weird for all you guys that have listened to us for a while. But hopefully, I've written a good enough episode. I'm probably the least knowledgeable on the NBA out of all of us, so it's going to be real interesting to see how this goes. But getting into the NBA draft that happened, so definitely, if you look at our mock draft here, I've got the sheets pulled up. So we only did a lottery mock draft. We had our Clutch Crew Sports mock draft that we did last week, but all 3 of us also did individual mock drafts. And as you can see, like I said, there's a lot of red. We all got the first 3 picks right, which pretty well everyone got the first 3 picks right, with Cade Cunningham going to Detroit, Jalen Green going to Houston, and Evan Mobley going to Cleveland. But thanks to Toronto, that so-called like impenetrable top 4 or top 5 really, because most people had Barnes going at 5 too. The Raptors had to ruin that for us, so we all got pick 4 wrong, and it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. The only other pick that we got wrong, I just realized I forgot to start the timer. But
it's all good. I got you.
Yeah, but the only other pick that we got correct was Eric and I correctly predicted that Jonathan Kuminga was going to get drafted by the Golden State Warriors. But like I said, other than that, we got all reds, so only 4 correct picks for Eric and I. It was really interesting. Definitely, I think Eric will definitely agree with me, and Zach probably would have too, that, we didn't think the craziness of this draft was going to start at pick number 4, but as soon as I saw on the TV that Scotty Barnes was going to Toronto, I knew everything was going to get shaken up after that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I know Zach might be unhappy about getting last place in the mock draft, but I know he's happy on the inside because of Toronto taking Barnes, that meant Zach got his boy Jalen Suggs. So I know Zach is super happy about that. He would probably be. Normally you could tend to get some rants on this podcast, but you probably get like a 5-minute rave from Zach if he was on this episode.
Definitely, yeah. There was definitely more things for us to cheer about during the draft than there were to get away of. Definitely, I will get to Eric eventually on the Thunder, because I didn't put that in the slide here, but I definitely want to hear his reaction to how the Thunder drafted. But going back to the slides here, same as we did last year, we've got 4 winners and 4 losers of the draft. So you can see here on the slides, we got the Hornets, Warriors, Rockets, and Magic were winners in our eyes, and losers were the Spurs, Knicks, Lakers, and kind of the NBA draft. I put that on there as like television viewers of the NBA draft were losers in this draft. Um, but I guess I'll start. Seems pretty obvious that I will start with the Charlotte Hornets because obviously, we suffered last year. It looked like we were going to have a good team, and everything kind of went downhill after LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward got hurt. So we definitely, and I wasn't too excited about having this number 11 pick. I was seeing a lot of reports that Kai Jones was linked to us for this pick, and I really kind of didn't want him at number 11 because I thought there was going to be a lot of other players that were going to be available that were better at that point. But surprisingly, I was actually reading an article on a different site that the Hornets basically, like the Hornets and the Warriors basically had the best drafts. So, which I'm totally excited about because other than LaMelo Ball, our draft was kind of underwhelming last year. So, surprisingly for me, the Hornets were able to get James Bouknight, the guard wing out of UConn, which pairs, I think, really well with the Hornets offense because the Hornets are a very perimeter-based team. LaMelo Ball needs good shooters to pass to, and Bouknight's a really good shooter. So coming up the floor, you're going to have Bouknight on one wing. You're going to possibly have Terry Rozier on the other wing. Maybe Miles Bridges too. So Bouknight's going to pair really well, and I'm really glad that they decided to take him because knowing some of these teams in the draft, the Hornets, I was still half expecting them to take Kai Jones at this spot, because obviously center being our biggest need. But thankfully, they made the right decision and went best available because Bouknight, in a lot of mock drafts, like no one really had him falling below number 7, which was the Golden State Warriors. So I was really surprised that he fell to us, and especially when I was thinking that, maybe one of these other teams like the Magic or the Grizzlies were going to take him instead. But he fell to us. And then the other thing that the Hornets did, which led to them having one of the best drafts, was we actually made a trade with the Knicks to move up to number 19 in the draft. And thankfully, moving up to 19, I was talking about how Kai Jones was linked to the Hornets. We still got him anyways at number 19. So the Hornets still got their big man, they still got their center, and they managed to get James Bouknight. The Hornets also drafted down somewhere in the second round. We drafted a guy, I can't remember his name. I think it was JT Thor at number 37, a very interesting name. Yeah, JT Thor. We made a trade with the Pistons to get him, and then also getting Scotty Lewis at number 56. So very good draft for the Hornets. Looking for good things out of them this season. Hopefully we can follow that up with maybe a good move or two in free agency. We're going to talk about that in a little bit because, we had a pretty decent draft last year and then we went and screwed it all up in free agency when we signed Gordon Hayward to that huge deal and brought back Bismack Bambumbo and all that stuff. So hopefully we don't repeat the mistakes of last year. But so that's it for the Hornets. So now I'm going to let Eric talk about the Houston Rockets and why we think they're winners.
I will say too, with your thing with your dreams of what the Hornets will do in free agency, they can't screw it up as bad as some teams already have in free agency, just with the little bit of moves that have already been made in these first couple hours of free agency here. So you got that going for you. But yeah, I mean, I gotta give the Rockets a shout out. I mean, I don't like Houston, obviously, as a Jaguars fan and a Thunder fan, but I have to give credit where credit's due here. I mean, the Rockets had a really good draft. Obviously, they secured Jalen Green at number 2 overall pick, and he had risen up many people's boards, and so they made a great move getting him. He's going to be a great young piece going forward, but really their other move in the draft that I really liked for them, not for me, but what I liked for them was because Connor wanted to know my picks on the Thunder, so you'll kind of get them at the same time here. But they traded with the Thunder when OKC was at pick 16, and they gave away 2 future first round picks from bad teams too. I think it was like one was from like the Timberwolves and one was from the Kings or something like that. So like at first glance, it sounds like it might not have been a good trade for them to do that. But the thing is, both of those picks are lottery protected. So really in the grand scheme of things, they didn't really give up much at all to move up to pick 16, and they got that center. I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong.
Alpern Sengun or something like that.
Sengun. I forget how to pronounce it. I apologize, but he seems like a really promising center, and there weren't necessarily a ton of great bigs at the top of the draft board. So for them to get him there at pick 16 was really good in my opinion. Honestly, I really wish the Thunder would have just stayed put at 16 and they'd been the one to take him, because I mean, while the Thunder need everything, like getting a good big is hard to find. So that would have been really nice. That's what I thought we were going to do. And so then when the Thunder made the trade, I was like, well, we got pick 18. They must be thinking he'll fall, and then Houston snags him up. So I wasn't happy with my Thunder for that, but I got to give like I said, I got to give the Rockets credit where credit's due. They made a lot of great moves, and they even their picks at 23 and 24 too, like, were really good. I mean, they secured 4 first-round picks in the draft. They're obviously a rebuilding team, but I like what they're doing. They're bringing in a lot of young guys, and they're going to start building it from the ground up instead of trying to go out and overpay for a bunch of average role players. Instead of overpaying them by several $1,000,000, they're going to start by building young, and then that'll give them cap space going forward as well. Like if they want to try to make a big splash, like it could be really attractive for a big name free agent if they've got a lot of young promising pieces to bring in somebody later down the road. So I like what Houston did here.
Eric's revealing his 2K GM strategy right here.
Oh yeah, I mean it's smart, dude. Like, but see, it's crazy though, because like the Thunder have done that. They've accumulated like 1,000,000 picks, but then it seems like they never know what to do with them though. Like
they just got to keep acquiring more. That's all they do. They just keep acquiring more. And
yeah,
one day,
it's like
it's fun. You know what they're trying to do? I'm sure one day what they're trying is like in 2024 or something, they're gonna have like 6 or 7 first-round picks. That's probably their goal.
Oh my god, dude! I don't know, man. Like I'm trying to be patient with the Thunder, man. Like I really am. Like I did like the pick Giddey. Like I mocked him to them in our like, obviously, like I didn't predict that, but in our mock that we did last week, I mocked Giddey to the Thunder, and I'm not going to say like I'm giddy about it, but I do think it's a good pick. I like that he's a versatile player, because that's really what you need in today's NBA. You need players that can play with it really being more of a positionless game. You need guys that can play on different areas of the court and not just one position only. Like, it's more valuable when you can do more things. So I like that pick, but I didn't like them trading away the pick at 16 for 2 future lottery protected picks that we probably won't even get. To me, it was like they did all this work. They traded for +2 with that 16 pick. I mean, we took on Kemba Walker's contract to get that pick, and then we're like, okay, well now we're just going to give it away for a future first round pick that we probably won't even get. I mean, I don't know, dude. Sometimes sometimes I'm like, man, these are genius moves. We're going to stockpile all these picks, and then we're going to trade them for some big names or trade them to move up to get somebody big. And then it's like, we just throw them away. I don't know.
I think the Thunder are idiots when it comes to the draft, and the Hornets are idiots when it comes to free agency. So,
I don't disagree with that, man. If only like our teams would just like combine like our ability to make trades and free agency with your team's ability to draft, like we'd have a super team.
So overall, before we move on real quick, overall grade for the Thunder, because I guess I'd probably give an A to the Hornets, but overall grade for the Thunder.
I'm giving the Thunder a C-.
Ooh, ouch.
Yeah, I didn't like what we did with our later picks either. I obviously, even like their pick at 18, I felt like they reached. And then the second round, like, who cares?
Right, yeah, pretty much.
Giving away the 16th pick for probably nothing. Didn't like that. And then Giddey, I thought there might have been one saving grace too they could have got, but I'm okay with that pick. So that saves it from being like a D or an F, but I can't give it a high grade, so C-.
All right. So then moving on to the Golden State Warriors, another one of our winners. So I mentioned that the Hornets potentially had the best draft. The Golden State Warriors potentially had the second best or even the best draft, depending on who you ask. And the Warriors, they only had 2 picks, but boy, did they make use of those 2 picks. Um, they went out and got Jonathan Kuminga, a versatile forward wing at number 7. Like I said, another person kind of similar to the Hornets with LaMelo Ball needs people to pass to. You know, Kuminga's a really good player to play next to guys like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins. And also, they had the fortune. I couldn't believe he fell this far, but they had the fortune to get Moses Moody at number 14 as well out of Arkansas. So this is going to be a very lethal backcourt. I mean, even when Steph and Klay are on the bench, then you're going to come out and have Kuminga and Moody on the court. And also, like I said, and when Andrew Wiggins is out there too, the Warriors, if they can just find a way to, possibly get maybe a little bit better production. I know obviously they got James Wiseman last year and he's still young and developing, but maybe if they can find a way to, get another big into their mix, the Warriors could be a really unstoppable team next year if they can put everything together. And if Klay Thompson can stay healthy, obviously that's the big question mark, but I think that Moses Moody pick especially is really key for, if Klay Thompson doesn't get healthy, because then they can potentially still have another playmaker next to Steph. He's not going to live up to Klay Thompson's, how well Klay Thompson plays in his first season or anything, but, at least gives the defense something else to think about so that maybe, just maybe, Steph Curry doesn't have to do everything by himself. Because, I mean, we saw how deadly they were with him doing everything by himself. They almost made the playoffs. They were able to almost beat the Lakers, and then they were somewhat surprisingly, didn't they lose to the Pacers? I don't know why I'm forgetting this, but didn't they lose to not the Pacers? Who is the other team in the West? Why am I forgetting this?
The Grizzlies?
Yeah, they lost to the Grizzlies, surprisingly. That was it.
Yeah, I was like, we were talking. You went to the Pacers. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm like,
yeah, no, I was like, the Pacers. I was like, the Pacers aren't in the West. What am I talking about? But yeah, so they, they lost to the Grizzlies surprisingly. So definitely, the Warriors, they went out and got depth, which is really what they needed. So, this team, it scares me a little bit. I know last year I was kind of still kind of lower on them. I had them finishing third in the division just because I wasn't so sure about Klay, and I wasn't so sure that Steph could carry the team, and for all the hype that Draymond Green gets and him getting put on Team USA, he's a bum. So
bro, how does he still get hype? I don't get it.
I don't know. I don't even know how he made Team USA. But then again, they also brought Kevin Love originally, so that just shows you how smart the people are making our team. So, but yeah, so Warriors definitely winners of the draft. So now we'll move on and discuss Zach's favorite team, or one of his favorite teams, the Orlando Magic, make a spot on our winners list.
Yeah, I mean this one's pretty easy. Jalen Suggs. Do I need to say anything else? I mean,
mic drop.
I mean, I will say I didn't. Their 8th overall pick they got, Franz Wagner, if I'm saying that right. I was okay with that pick for the Magic. I didn't love it. I don't think from the vibe I got from what Zach said, he didn't really like the pick either. He probably dislikes it more than I do. But I mean, when you get a guy that initially, going into the college season last year, was really projected to be like a top 2 overall pick, and then he slid down a couple spots in the rankings and everything, but still, when you get a guy with this clutch factor that he has, and you get that talent at the 5th overall pick, I mean that's a dub right there. I'm a big fan of Jalen Suggs as well. I was praying for some miracle to Jesus that the Magic would be dumb and not take him so that my Thunder could get him. But obviously, I knew that wasn't going to happen, and
they're not the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they were thinking, because really, Barnes seems more of a project, whereas Suggs I think is ready. Barnes could be really good, but I see him as more of a prospect project right now, and that's surprising because I know Toronto's still trying to compete to win now. So I'm really surprised, especially with
because
Kyle
they still
Lowry
have
leaving too. I'm
Right,
sure
but
they
like
knew
they
he was
still
going
have
to
Van
leave.
Vliet and Siakam, and they just brought Gary Trent Jr. back. So like,
Yeah, like they're still trying to win, and especially with Kyle Lowry leaving, I'm really shocked they didn't take Jalen Suggs. But I know Zach is super ecstatic about it, and I don't blame him. I am happy for Zach because, like the Thunder, like the Magic have been struggling, and they're with all the veterans they got rid of before the trade deadline. They're obviously in a rebuild, just like my team is. So I'm happy for him that his team got a good piece to start that rebuild with. And so if you're a Magic fan, you've got to be ecstatic about that.
yep. So now we're going to move on to a few things that teams who might not be exactly as ecstatic. Starting with the San Antonio Spurs here, really probably one of the head scratcher moves of the draft. Like I know when the Grizzlies took Zaire Williams, that was definitely like a kind of like a little bit of a head scratcher. But I know the people on ESPN when I was watching, they were still like really hyping up Zaire Williams. And I know, which was kind of funny. Both Eric and I mentioned this that we both thought that when they announced his name that they said Zion Williamson
Yeah,
because
it
because it
really
was
is.
originally the Pelicans pick too. So we were like Zion Williamson, what?
I was like, wait, are
But
they showing a flashback or something?
right. So, but at least from what I've heard about him, he has like they keep saying that he's got upside. So I don't know. That's why I chose to include the Spurs instead of the Grizzlies, just because the Spurs, they, in my opinion, really reached with getting Joshua Primo at that spot. I mean, it was so funny. I could even hear it in the voices of. It was kind of like when the Las Vegas Raiders make their draft picks in the NFL, and the
Oh,
and the analysts are all like, "Wait, what? Like they took who?"
huh?
And that was and that was kind of like what I was seeing with the Spurs, like especially when you still had guys like well, not Book Knight, but you had like Sengun and Corey Kispert and Keon Johnson were all still available. Like I think Sengun especially would have really helped this Spurs team. Like they really need a big man in San Antonio. That was like one of their biggest needs. And then you go out and grab Joshua Primo, who, you mentioned Scotty Barnes being a project. Like Joshua Primo is definitely a project. Like he's not ready to be a starter right now. So the San Antonio Spurs definitely wasted that pick. I'm not too sure about what they did later in the draft. I mean, I think they didn't have any other first round picks. They really only had second round picks.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
so nothing really. I mean, I can confirm that, but really nothing else that of note to talk about for them. Just a major reach by them, and especially the Spurs. They're coming off being that 10 seed in the West. You know, missing out on the playoffs, missing out on the play-in. They got pretty well destroyed by the Grizzlies in that game. The 9 versus 10 game. So the Spurs are definitely on a downward trend. You know, it's amazing to me in some ways that they still have that they still probably have this little bit of hype around them, like, oh, maybe it's still the Spurs, like, they still can do it. And the fact that Popovich is still the coach, like, he just needs to retire. I mean, like at this
yeah,
point,
I hate to say that too, but I agree.
yeah, and it was kind of like when I was telling, we were talking about Team USA earlier. Like, I really wish they would have made Steve Kerr the head coach instead of making Pop the head coach. Like, I think Steve Kerr would be doing a much better job than Pop is doing right now. Like, obviously USA basketball still has a chance to win, but they're definitely not the team they have been in the past. And I think it would have been different with Steve Kerr, but not looking good for the San Antonio Spurs. But also a very strange draft night for the New York Knicks. Despite them looking like potential winners here in free agency, losers on draft night.
Yeah, my main thing with the Knicks is just like all night they just kept trading back and trading back and trading back, and I don't really know why you would do that because I could understand it if this was a draft class that was expected to not be very good other than the first few picks or something, like like if there's nobody
Kind of
that
like
you just
last year.
yeah, if there's just not anybody you're, because I think their first pick was initially a pick 21 or something like that. So I could understand if it was a thin draft class and by pick 21 there just wasn't anybody there that you felt like could contribute to the team or something. But this was considered by many people to be a very loaded draft class with depth all the way down the board. So when you're in a I think that's another reason why I was mad at the Thunder too for trading away that 16th pick. But when it's a draft class like this, like you need to make some picks. I mean, honestly, especially with the Knicks too, like trying to get into the contending picture again. I mean, they did finish, pretty high in the Eastern Conference last year, and they're looking to build on that. Like Connor said, like we'll probably get into in the free agency stuff, but they have made some moves in free agency now. Like they're obviously looking to contend. I'm surprised they didn't try to make a package and move up some and maybe get up into like the tail end of the lottery or something. I was surprised usually when teams trade back like that, it's a team that's rebuilding, like the Thunder or something, or what like the Browns used to do in the NFL all the time. They used to do that a
or a
lot.
team that or a team that's already stacked, like kind of like if they were like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of the NBA, right?
Maybe maybe a Lakers team or something like
Or the
that.
Nets.
But when you're a team that's kind of in the middle, like maybe like above like top like 12 to 15 team, and you're trying to out of 30, and you're trying to make that push to get to the next level, like why are you trading back so much? I just didn't really understand that. But that's really, I guess, all I have to say about the Knicks. Like I just didn't understand their draft at all with all the trading back.
Yeah, I know that was another thing that the analysts were definitely scratching their heads on. They were like, they don't understand. This team is. I mean, I guess the Knicks feel like they have enough like young pieces on their team, but I mean, they're still. I don't know. I guess they're trying to go for that mix of depth, or not depth, youth and veterans. Because I mean, with some of their, like I said, we're going to get into free agents in a little bit. With some of their free agent signings, it's like, they're signing these older players, and it's like, almost I feel like I'd want to have more, at least another young player to put in there. Someone like you said, this loaded draft class. But I don't know, head scratching moves. I'm glad they traded their pick to the Hornets though, because that meant we got Kai Jones. So thank you for that, New York Knicks. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So
Connor thanks you.
Yeah, I do. That's very rare. But yeah, so I'm going to move on and talk about now the next loser of the draft was, in my opinion, just for all of, probably the majority of the public, watching the NBA draft on television, it's just become, I don't know, it's become, we thought that the NFL draft was kind of getting bad on TV. Like the NBA draft is twice as worse on TV now. I don't know. It's just almost becoming unwatchable. Like one of the things that was happening the other night with the draft, like basically, thankfully, I was smart enough to stay off of Twitter, but Woj was spoiling pretty much every single pick before they happened. And it wasn't even like, right before because, this happens too in the NFL, like right before the pick happens, like, they'll be like, oh, someone so-and-so drafted this person, but that'll be like 30 to 60 seconds before the pick happens. So it's not like, super spoilish or anything, but he would like, even before the team was on the clock or like right after they went on the clock, he would be like, oh, the Orlando, I mean, this was obvious, but like, the Orlando Magic are taking Jalen Suggs here, or like, oh, the Golden State Warriors are taking Moses Moody here, and the Warriors still have like 5 minutes on the clock. And it's like, okay, well, what's the point of me even watching this on TV if I can just, have my Twitter set to notify me every time Woj makes a tweet, and I'm like, oh, okay, I know who this team's drafting. So that was obviously a big problem. And then just we've talked about this before, that just the way that the trades work in the NBA draft, like I appreciate that they tried to fix it a little bit on TV, where like, especially, I mean, I can use the example of the number 19 pick with the Knicks and Hornets. Like, the Knicks traded it to the Hornets, and even though the commissioner, he still came out and said it was the Knicks pick and everything, but at least on TV, they had like a little tiny graphic that said like proposed trade to the Hornets. It was very small. It wasn't, big and obvious like the NFL always does it. But at least they tried. But it was also bad for the people that were there, because, the people that were there who were Knicks fans, they announced the pick that, oh, this was more so the case when with Keon Johnson at number 21, which the Knicks also traded that pick, talking about the Knicks trading back to the Clippers. And Adam Silver comes out and he's like, oh, the New York Knicks take Keon Johnson at number 21, and all the Knicks fans are like super excited, like, yeah, we're getting Keon Johnson. And it's like, little do you know, this pick's been traded to the Clippers. Like but
yeah,
the
you ain't getting him.
right. So, but like, you don't know that because the NBA hasn't announced that. So, just bad for television, bad for people there. Like, it was only really good for people on Twitter who, almost couldn't watch the draft just because, they were getting the constant updates. So, I don't know. It's something that I'm starting to question, as the years go on. Like, do I actually want to sit down and watch this or not? I mean, did you get that same feeling, Eric?
Yeah, something I'm going to add too that I didn't think to mention, like when we were planning the episode, but another L with the NBA draft on TV was the commentators were god awful, dude. It's like I don't know what was happening that they thought was so funny, but I mean they were laughing like every 30 seconds. And they had the creepiest laugh. I put out a tweet about it, but like I didn't get any response other than, Clutch Crew Sports people, but I thought maybe that would get some attention, but I mean, I swear, dude, it was so annoying to be like, yeah, when this kid did this, like
a Kawhi Leonard laugh.
It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't as bad as the Kawhi laugh, but I will say a lot of it sounded fake and forced. Like it didn't sound like a generic laugh, or it didn't sound like like
a
natural,
real laugh,
organic laugh. It just sounded all generic and like robotic almost. It was kind of weird. Like they'd like say something and be like, like that's what it sounded like, dude. It was so
it's kind of like,
like
when
you laughed at what I did, like that was a genuine laugh. But if it was them, they would have been like, oh,
it's like someone laughing at their own joke, right?
Yeah, and I do that sometimes, like maybe a little bit, but they would all four of them erupt in laughter, and it sounded exactly the same. It was so weird, dude. It's just, I don't know, man. I've never experienced anything like that. It was just really bizarre, man.
All right, so
but yeah, viewer. My main thing with the draft too is just like you said with the trades, they don't announce them. They like the Keon Johnson one. Honestly, they actually didn't even announce that one until after it had happened. I was like, oh man, like because as a Vols fan, I was happy to see him get drafted. But I was like, dang, really? He went to the Knicks, and then like a few minutes later. Well, actually, the trade was proposed to the Clippers, and I was like, "Well, how did that one come in so late?"
I remember. I think I told you that. It was funny because you were like, "Oh, Keon Johnson finally got taken." I was like, "Actually, he's going to the Clippers," and you were like,
"Yeah."
What?
Well, for some reason, like everything else, they were announcing it like 5 minutes early, but for some reason, that one they didn't get on TV right away. But I don't know. And then they got to walk up there and like put the hats on of the team that isn't even actually really taking them. I'm like, it's stupid, dude. But we rant about this every year, so I'll stop.
Yeah, let's move on to the final loser of the NBA draft. Maybe not so much a loser in the draft, but a loser the day of the draft, and that would be the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. I hate this trade for the Lakers. I mean, as a Laker hater and a LeBron hater, I mean, I guess in my mind, I really should call it a dub for me, but I don't. But in my opinion, this trade is not going to work out for the Lakers. So, like, if you're a basketball fan, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that the Lakers traded away 3 players of their team and their first round pick from the draft, and they acquired Russell Westbrook. But my biggest problem with the trade for the Lakers is, first of all, they gave up a ton of depth. I mean, their depth on this team was already kind of thin to begin with.
Trash.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say trash. I mean, they still like were a top team in the West last year until AD
got hurt.
AD and LeBron went down, and then they never could really get fully healthy again. But like they wouldn't have been the 7th seed if LeBron and AD stayed healthy. I mean, we all know that. But at the same time, their depth was already really not the greatest. And then now you trade it all away to get Russ. So they're banking on, first of all, they're already banking on the fact that all 3 of them are going to stay healthy. But Russ always sits out a lot of games, like on back-to-backs. He doesn't always play the back-to-backs. And then LeBron and AD have both had injury concerns over the last few seasons. So they're banking that all 3 of them are going to stay healthy. But my biggest problem with the trade for the Lakers is I just don't think Russell Westbrook and LeBron are going to mesh well together. I mean, we've already seen this problem happen with Russell Westbrook before when he was on the Rockets with James Harden. I mean, these were two guys that like to ball dominate. They both like to get their stats. They like to be the one to drive and then either get a layup or kick out for an assist or something. They both don't really like to play defense. They like to camp out in the low block and collect rebounds. They're literally the same player, just Russell Westbrook is smaller. I mean, that's their, in terms of their style. They're like their
And
style.
maybe LeBron likes to pass like slightly more.
Yeah, that's true. And then the problem is neither of them are great 3-point shooters. Uh, I saw some people on Twitter saying, "Well, the Bucks just proved you could, win a championship with a star player that can't really shoot threes." But the difference is, while the Bucks aren't necessarily an amazing 3-point shooting team, they've still got people around you that can, drain a three if you kick it out, for an open shot, especially when they get DiVincenzo back. But with him and Middleton, you had even as much
Drew
as I can't,
Holiday.
even as much as I can't stand him, PJ Tucker in the corner, like at least can do that, like. But who on the Lakers really is going to be that 3-point option, for them? I just like Mark Gasol.
Well, especially now that they traded away KCP, like he was one of their best.
Yeah, and then Caruso's leaving now, which I mean, he's not the greatest player, obviously, but he's a decent 3-point shooter that's gone now. I mean, the problem is when you got two guys that like to ball dominate like that, it usually does not work, and that's my concern with them. Like, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter, like a lot of Lakers fans that think this is the greatest thing ever, and then I've seen other people that complain saying that, oh, the Lakers are a super team now. And I don't know. I don't know if I see them as a super team. I mean, even though they got the three big stars, like, do you feel like this is a super team, Connor, or like, what do you think?
No, Russell Westbrook does not. I mean, how are him and LeBron gonna fight over the triple doubles, man? Like someone's gonna have to get the triple double. Like,
Well, see what they're gonna do is game one, LeBron will get the triple double, and then game two, Russell Westbrook will get the triple double, and then on a back to back, whichever game Russ plays, he'll get the triple double, and whichever game he sits, LeBron will get the triple double. That's how they're gonna do it.
yeah, no, I mean, I think, Zach even chimed in on this too. Like all three of us think this made the Lakers worse going after Russell Westbrook. Cause like you said, these two players, like they just don't mesh well. I mean, really, and honestly, we were talking about, where we would rank these teams, for favorites for the championship last year. And obviously we all said the Nets number one, because the Nets, that's a super team. Like Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, like that's a super team. And then, but honestly now, like I had the Lakers at number two. I'd probably move at least the Bucks ahead of the Lakers at this point. Like the Bucks are, in much better shape than the Lakers are now, in my opinion. And I don't know, man, like maybe, if Kawhi does come back to the Clippers, like if the Clippers can make a few moves, maybe I could move them above the Lakers. I could maybe move the Suns ahead of the Lakers now that CP3 is coming back. Like, I know we'll get to that too, but like, he definitely, in my opinion, still at least has one more good year in him. So, I
Yeah,
think the
and the
Suns,
Warriors are getting Klay Thompson
right,
back.
and the Warriors are getting, if Klay Thompson can stay healthy, I think the Warriors, like the Lakers are falling down my board after making this trade. Because like you said, Russell Westbrook and LeBron James just aren't going to mesh well together at all. It's a recipe for disaster, and honestly, I'm happy that it's both of them, like you said, because I don't like either of them.
Yeah, I'm just shocked the Lakers didn't learn anything from this, because they already kind of dealt with this on like a miniature level with Dennis Schroeder last year. While he's not like a triple double guy like Russ is, I mean, he's a true point guard that wants to be a starter, but LeBron likes to play point guard. So when you
Right.
got
Even though
yeah,
even though he's supposed to be small forward.
yeah, he's not the traditional size of a point guard, obviously, but he likes to play the point guard position basically on offense. So when you got two point guards out there, when neither one of them can truly get into a rhythm, it just doesn't work. I mean, what I think what would have made more sense for the Lakers would have been to trade for Buddy Hield instead, because obviously on a level of numbers and production and stuff, he's not as good as Russ, but he would be a much better fit on that team. He's a great 3-point shooter. He can stand out there and give LeBron space, and then if LeBron gets crowded in the paint, he can kick it out to Buddy Hield, knowing there's a great chance that 3-point shot's going to go in. He's not going to be able to do that with Russ, and they would have had to give up way less to get him. They could have kept at least one or two of their other guys probably to get him.
Yeah, I think like the proposed trade for Hield was like Harrell and like a pick, and that was it. Instead of like Harrell, KCP, and like 2 picks. Russ.
Yeah, and
Kuzma, right? So, I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, even when you talk about the point guard thing, like having 2 point guards, it can work if they're different styles of point guards, because that's why it's honestly like why the Hornets were able to make it work, in my opinion, with like LaMelo Ball and Terry Rozier. Like Rozier is definitely more of like a scoring point guard, whereas Ball, like he can score, don't get me wrong, but like he's definitely a pass first
facilitator.
Yeah, he's a facilitator. Rozier's a scorer. So, like, if you can have 2 guys like that out there, then I think it can work. But like you said, Russ and LeBron are pretty much the same player. Like, they're the stat. What am I trying to say here? Stat grabbers.
Stat patters.
Stat patters. Like, they're both stat patters. Who's going to grab that meaningless rebound now? Like, they're going to be fighting over the meaningless rebounds. So.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's bad, and I do know some Lakers fans that agree with me actually. So like I know I'm at least we're at least not alone. There are some Lakers fans too that agree with us on this. So
yeah. All right, so then that's all for the draft winners and losers. Now we're going to move on to free agency. Actually, it's funny. I haven't been thinking about this, but I haven't seen if there's any more moves that have happened since.
I can for you while you.
Yeah.
I can check for you while you're presenting the next area here.
So basically, what we have here is actually nothing has happened. Thankfully, it's just basically Blake Griffin going back to the Nets is the biggest thing. But yeah, so. Oddly enough, this was supposed to be kind of my, when I saw that both of these guys were going to be declining their player options, like this was going to be my, I don't know, interesting slide with, the 2 big name free agents, Kawhi Leonard and Chris Paul. And it's still interesting in a way, but not as interesting as I would have hoped for, because as you.
Oh, Connor. Hello. I don't know if I'm going out or if you're going out. Oh.
What?
Okay, I lost you for like a good minute there.
What were you talking about?
Edit that audio. Well, you were talking about Kawhi and CP3 like declining the player options and all that, and then I just like lost you after that. So, but you sound good now.
But yeah, anyway, so they were declining the player options, possibly wanting to take longer term deals. Now with Kawhi, even though all the news has come out and said that he wants to he's doing this to work out a long term deal with the Clippers, we don't know with Kawhi Leonard. I don't know if anyone really expected him to leave the Spurs back when he did that. And also, with Toronto, like there was still, there was like the rumors that he wanted to go to the Lakers, but there was also a lot of rumors saying he wanted to go back to Toronto. He just wanted a longer term deal. And then he pulled, Zach saw this coming, obviously, somehow, but, he
has
pulled
that close tie with Uncle Dennis or something. Somehow.
Right, but then he pulled a fast one and went to the Clippers and managed to bring Paul George with him. We didn't see that coming either. So if Kawhi Leonard were to, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of free agent moves already that we're going to get to in a little bit here, but if Kawhi Leonard were to test the free agent market and not go back to the Clippers, where do you think he would go potentially?
See, I've been thinking about it, and the only team that I had heard of that might have been on his radar other than the Clippers would have been the Miami Heat, but they already brought back Duncan Robinson on a ridiculous deal, and now they brought in Kyle Lowry.
They also just
Like,
gave Jimmy Butler the max too, or something like that. Also, like they extended
yeah, I
him.
mean they can't afford Kawhi now if they were going to get him, and obviously the Lakers. Like if he wanted to stay in LA but go to the Lakers for like what was rumored as last time in free agency, I mean, they obviously have LeBron and AD, and then now they traded for Russ, so there's no way they can afford him. So I don't really know what other team he could go to, because obviously he wants to win, but obviously like the Nets can't afford him, the Bucks can't afford him. He probably like I don't even if he wanted to go back to Toronto or something, like they can't afford him. Like I
Seems
don't
like
know
he's
where
kind
he
of
could
stuck.
go. Yeah, I mean I think he's pretty much stuck with LA whether he wants it or not at this point. I mean, maybe Dallas, but I don't really think he would want to go there, but
Yeah, I agree. That's probably the only place like maybe that could afford him, because they're the only ones like they brought back Hardaway, but they haven't made any like big splashes yet.
yeah,
So
the only other one I could think of that, I mean, they've made some moves, but the only other team I could think of that maybe could still afford him that would be big market is like the Knicks.
yeah,
But
because they
even
have all
then,
that cap space.
yeah, they've
But
got a ton of cap space. And then obviously a team with a lot of cap space like the Thunder or Hornets or Rockets, like he's not going to go to a team like that, that's not a, contender to win the championship right away. So I don't know. I mean, I think he's stuck with the Clippers, but is there anywhere you can think of he might go differently than me?
no, I think you probably hit on the teams. Yeah, I think honestly, I mean, obviously we don't know what's going through his head, but if he wanted to test the free agent market, I think he made a huge mistake by waiting until like 6 o'clock on the last day of the deadline to decline his option. Because even though technically today was like the first day that, teams could communicate with free agents, like we all know they've been doing it for days now. Like
Yeah,
they've
because
all
you
been.
can't tell me that somebody like they were supposed to not start negotiating until 6 p.m. Eastern time, but at 6:03 there's already a deal getting done. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
there's already like
yeah,
yeah, there's already like 5 deals that are getting done.
yeah,
So
there ain't no way.
right. So yeah, he definitely, if he wanted to look outside of LA, he definitely made a huge mistake by waiting that long because I remember like Norman Powell and Will Barton and a couple others, like they declined their player options like a couple weeks before the deadline. Like I didn't even see that until I finally researched it, but it was something like, yeah, like Norman Powell declined his player option like 2 weeks ago. So if Kawhi should have done that if he wanted to look outside, because then that would have changed the whole mindset of everything. Everyone would
Oh
have
yeah,
thought like, maybe it's like with the Knicks, for example, like, oh, we're looking at, Evan Fournier or we're looking at DeMar DeRozan. But like as soon as Kawhi like declines that option, if it's like even a couple days before free agency, and then they're like, whoa, hold on, like stop everything. Now
yeah,
we have to reassess. But doing it like that late, I'm sure the Knicks probably already worked out what they were going to do. And then it's
yeah.
just
And
kind of
same
like,
with the
oh,
Heat,
well,
like
like, right. And same with the Heat. Like you said, I mean, we were already hearing like Kyle Lowry rumors and stuff like that beforehand. So it's like, okay, well, yay, Kawhi declined, but I've already got my plan in place. So I can't just go back on everything I've already done. So yeah, I agree. I think he will be going back to the Clippers now. There's not much else placed for him. But then the other big name free agent, Chris Paul, obviously he just signed a 4-year, $120 million contract with the Phoenix Suns. Now, we discussed this last week on the podcast, how we all thought this would be a bad idea. Like, we all basically said that, you know, originally, the original rumors were a 3-year, $90 million deal. We thought that was still too long. I know, like, we talked about having like a 2-year deal maybe for him would be appropriate, but a 4-year deal now from the Phoenix Suns. I mean, what is this going to be like for the Suns? Like, obviously, I guess I'll give my opinion. I think it's good for them in the short term. Obviously, like I think Chris Paul does have 1 or 2 more good years left in him, but they're going to be screwed like 3 or 4 years from now when inevitably he's going to regress. I mean, he's already started regressing, and he's going to regress more as he gets into his late 30s. And now they're going to be stuck with this player that, is making $30 million a year, and no one's going to want him because he's old and washed up. And I mean, who's going to pay for that? So I really don't like this move by the Suns. I think, if Chris Paul wanted to get a 4-year deal, he should have gotten it from somewhere else. I mean, especially with all the young pieces that the Phoenix Suns have, like, they really we're looking like they have a bright future ahead of them. This derails that quite a bit for me, in my opinion. It's like it really hurts their chances of being able to bring in, you know, other pieces, maybe 2 or 3 years from now when Chris Paul's not as good. But what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on with this. Like, I mean, and it even hurts them kind of in the short term now because obviously they're going to have to re-sign DeAndre Ayton, and by the time he has a big deal, Booker has a big deal, and then Chris Paul has a $30 million deal, they're not going to be able to afford to bring in anybody else except for like mid-level exceptions or whatever. I mean, so if they want to get like if they're looking to get that like one extra piece to maybe make them a title contender, even now they still can't do that. But I agree with you. I mean, I would have been okay with it being like a 2-year deal, but I think this is just absolutely absurd. And I know a lot of people are, I mean, honestly, some of the other contracts that have already been given out are worse than this, in my opinion. But this one's just bad because of his age, because it was already hard for teams to trade him before with that massive contract that he had. But it's going to be, even though this is a lower number, it's still going to be, if like in 2 years, at the end of the second year of the deal, if he's just playing, like if he just regresses so bad to where he can't even be a starter anymore, he's coming off the bench or something like that, or, you know, maybe he's starting, but he's not really producing anything. Who's going to take on a 2-year, $60 million deal in a trade? I mean, like if I was a team in that situation, I'd be like, look, if you're going to give me Chris Paul and I'm going to take on this contract, then you got to give me Devin Booker too, or something. Like,
Yeah, like, I need some compensation for my taking this
yeah,
contract off your hands.
I'm not just taking this contract on for nothing, or or like do like the Thunder might do and take like 4 future first round picks from them, which also would
Right, or like maybe
like,
take Mikal Bridges or someone like that from them.
I would need more than that, but I mean, I just don't know, man. I don't think this is a good move. Like even 3 years, I thought was a lot. 4 years is worse.
Yeah. So moving on with the free agents now, a fair amount of these we are just going to kind of speed through because there's not too much to talk about them. You can see um, Mike Conley, we already all got right him going to the Utah Jazz. We all knew he was going to re-sign. His contract's not terrible. I think it's a little bit high, also kind of given his age, but not terrible. John Collins, restricted free agent for the Hawks. Sounds like they're really far away from a deal, but the Hawks really hold all the leveraging power with John Collins because he is a restricted free agent. So, I've heard that they're probably going to try and offer him the max, most likely. But, even if another team comes along and gives him an offer, the Hawks are just going to match that. They're not letting him go. We've already talked about Kyle Lowry, went to the Miami Heat. He got an absurdly large contract.
Oh
I
my
don't know
god, dude.
why the Miami Heat decided to do that. Lonzo Ball ended up going to Chicago. This was one of the first rumors that I had been hearing. I remember there was some talk that he was going to go to the Celtics originally, but then he became part of a sign-and trade with the Chicago Bulls. So I don't know. How do you think Lonzo Ball is going to fit in Chicago? I'm not sure because he also, I mean, this is a trend, getting big contracts. I don't know if he's going to fit with. I mean, I'm sure he'll fit with Zach LaVine, but I don't know. I don't know if this is a step in the right direction for the Bulls and their rebuild, giving him this big contract when, in my opinion, he hasn't really shown to be that great of a player.
Yeah, this is just like another example I talk about with these like average role players getting these insane contracts like this. I mean, it's just crazy. Like Lonzo Ball's not terrible, but is he really worth? Didn't he get like 4 years, 80 million or something like
Yeah,
that?
something like he's going to be averaging somewhere like upwards of 20 million a year.
I mean, my God, dude! Like I swear, like Harrison Barnes started all this when he walked into the Kings front office and got that like 4 year, $88 million deal. Like it's just like I know the salary cap is pretty high and everything, but like, good
Well, you
lord,
got the
man.
luxury tax too.
Yeah,
That's the one thing about the NBA that I know is comparing it to the NHL, especially. Like the NHL has a very hard cap. Like you cannot go over that cap. And
Yeah.
it's the situation that the Hurricanes are in right now this year. Like, we're having to make exceptions for a lot of players we had last year and let some of them go because, that cap is rock solid. But in the NBA, it's like, the cap doesn't exist, like,
It
at
really
all.
doesn't. I mean, because even if you're over the cap, if it's a guy already on your team, you can re-sign him and go over the cap into the luxury tax, or you can use a mid-level exception. Like, I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, I will say I do think he's a good fit for the Bulls though, because he's going to bring better defense on the perimeter. Because Zach LaVine's a just scorer basically. He doesn't really contribute
Yeah.
much on defense. So Lonzo Ball will help make the defense better. So I think the fit is good. I think the contract is terrible, but I do think the fit is good. The Bulls just seem to really be like going for it, even though they probably should be more so rebuilding, but I guess they're trying to keep Levine happy, and they brought in Vucevic last year and gave up their first round pick to get him, and now they've brought in Lonzo Ball. So like they're going for it is I guess is my guess as to what they're trying to do, but bad contract though.
Yeah. So then we have probably the biggest name free agent left, who has an unpredictable future because, like we said, seems like Kawhi is going to end up back with the Clippers. John Collins is almost certain to end up back with the Hawks. So that leaves us with DeMar DeRozan of the San Antonio Spurs. He is getting up there in age, 32 years old, but he's still, he was the best player on the Spurs. He can still be a quality piece on a team. Now, this was one of the players that all three of us had him going to different locations. I have him going to the Dallas Mavericks. Eric has him going to the Lakers, and Zach has him going to the Pelicans. Now, I had heard the rumors about him going to the Lakers because he wants to, kind of like Kawhi, he wanted to go back to LA where he's from. But I just don't know, like, how the Lakers, I'm sure they can find some way to afford him in some fashion. But everything that I was reading about it, though, still was saying that if he was going to go back to the Lakers, or not back, go to the Lakers, he would have to take a massive pay cut, which I don't think he wants to do, especially given his age. So that's why I have him going to the Mavericks. I think, we talked about the Mavericks as being a potential place for Kawhi. I think the Mavericks could certainly afford DeMar DeRozan. I'm sure it would make Luka Doncic happy. It would probably, put them in a better position to go forward and potentially contend for a championship this year. But why do you think that why do you think the Lakers are going to be able to work out a deal with him?
I just got a really bad feeling about this dude. The Lakers have their mid-level exception available, and obviously, you're right. The only way they can get him is if he takes a huge pay cut. But I don't think he's going to do this like long term or anything. If he goes to the Lakers, it's going to be solely to go there for 1 year, try to do everything possible to get a ring, and then next year he'll chase the money. Like I don't see this as being like, oh, he's going to sign there for like 3 or 4 years or something like that. I think it'll be a rental to help the Lakers get a championship. And I've seen stuff saying, oh, well, because of the Lakers getting Russ, they can't bring him in now. But I haven't really seen anything that says, oh, DeMar DeRozan for sure doesn't want to go there, or, oh, the Lakers for sure don't want to bring him in. I haven't seen anything like that. Because like Connor already mentioned, he loves LA. He's from there. He's interested in going back there. And then also, not only that, this guy, for whatever reason, just like loves LeBron James. Like even back
Him
when
and Doris Burke should get together.
yeah, even back when he was on the Raptors and LeBron was on the Cavs, and the Cavs were sweeping the Raptors every year, like DeRozan would still like praise LeBron and say how great he was. I'm like, bro, you want to give respect, even when you lose, but like, come on, man, like you're like just sucking up to this guy. Like you're supposed to be like trying to compete and give it joy to beat him, but you're like, oh, he's just amazing. Like I don't know, like I feel like he really wants to play with LeBron, even if it's just for a year. Like I'm hopeful it doesn't happen. I hate when there's these like teams that get a lot of star players, and then a bunch of like older veteran guys come in for like minimum wage and just to be on the team to try to get a ring, and it makes the team even better than it already is. Like because we talked about like the potential fit issues with Russ and LeBron and everything, but if they get a guy like DeMar DeRozan in there who can also get you buckets, then that kind of, it doesn't like permanently fix the problem, but it makes life a lot easier,
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I really do not want DeMar DeRozan to go there. I hope he, wisens up and gets his money while he can with a different team, or tries to go to a different contender to maybe get over the hump or something like that. Like, just don't go to the Lakers, bro. Like, just don't do it. But I don't know why, man. When I was researching it, I saw like the Mavericks and Pelicans, maybe like you and Zach put, but when I wasn't seeing anything disputing that he for sure wasn't going to go to the Lakers, I'm like, I just got a bad feeling it's going to be the Lakers, man. But hopefully I'm wrong. I will not mind if I get this one wrong.
All right. So then moving on here. So Jared Allen, he signed an extension with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Eric mentioned how the Heat massively overpaid Duncan Robinson. Tim Hardaway re-signed with the Mavericks. Now, probably the only real intriguing thing on this list, I'll keep it quick, is Dennis Schroeder. All three of us had him going to the Knicks, but the Knicks, they re-signed Derrick Rose. They brought in Evan Fournier. There's some other move that they made that is actually on here somewhere
that they brought back Nerlens Noel too.
That's right. They brought back Nerlens Noel. I don't know. The Knicks have been making moves, and so basically, it's going to be interesting to see if they can afford him or not. I think they still can. They have a lot of cap space. Honestly, for Schroeder, it's going to be interesting for me if he doesn't end up going to the Knicks. Then I'm not sure where he's going to go. Like, I'm not sure he's going to be able to go to a contender. Like, I'm sure he can go somewhere, but going to a contender is going to be really difficult for him if the Knicks aren't able to afford him, because I'm sure he doesn't want to go back to the Lakers. The Clippers probably won't be able to. I mean, the Clippers could maybe afford him. I don't know. Potentially, but also they're probably going to be giving Kawhi a massive extension. So it's going to be interesting to see for him what happens if the Knicks cannot afford him, because obviously the Heat already got their point guard with Kyle Lowry. The Mavericks need a guy like DeMar DeRozan. They don't need a guy like Dennis Schroeder. They've already got Luka Doncic. They don't need him. So, and then obviously I have Oladipo on here. He's a question mark for sure. Not an interesting question mark, but more so just a question mark on where he's going to go. A couple guys here, like I said, Fournier went to the Knicks. Gary Trent Jr. went to the Raptors. I guess the biggest question on here really is Spencer Dinwiddie. We all have him going to the Wizards, and basically everything I've been seeing about him is like that the Nets are going to try and work a sign and trade with the Wizards to send him there. So I don't know. What do you think they could possibly get in response for Spencer Dinwiddie? I'm like, do you think they could potentially get a first round pick, or like, I don't know what sort of players? I mean, obviously they're not going to get Bradley Beal or anything for him, but what kind of
what I've heard is that they might get one of the guys that the Wizards acquired when they gave up Russ, like whether it's
like Kuzma
like Trez or Kuzma or something. That's what I've been hearing. But I mean, if I was the Nets, I wouldn't really want to do that. But I'd rather get draft picks than like
right.
Any of those guys. But I mean, not that the Nets need draft picks with the talent they already have on the team, but if you want to like look to the future, or like if they get draft picks, then they could use the draft picks to try to bring in somebody or something, for another trade down the road. But I don't know. But I just want to touch on Dennis Schroeder real quick too. Kind of like how you said Kawhi made the mistake with waiting so long to like decline his player option and everything. I think Dennis Schroeder made a mistake going out and saying that he wants like a 4-year, $120 million deal or whatever it was. Like when he turned down the offer that the Lakers offered him last year. I think he really put himself in a corner there, because as much as I like the guy, he's not worth that. And all these other teams know it. And he's trying to go out and get that. But now the problem is all these teams, since they're like balking at that offer and not willing to give him that, they're like you said with how other teams were making their plans, like all these other teams have made all these plans and brought in these other guys. Well, now where's Schroeder going to go? You know what I mean? Like he's probably going to have to take if he doesn't get a long-term deal, he's probably going to have to take like a prove it deal type of a thing or something, which I'm sure he's already been making less money than a lot of these other players at his level are getting. So he probably really doesn't want to do that. But if he really wants to get a big contract like that, he's probably going to have to take a prove it type of deal and show that he can really earn it. But so I think he negotiated himself into a corner by turning down that deal from the Lakers last year and publicly saying he feels like he's worth like $100 to $120 million. I think that was pretty bad.
Yeah. So then on the next slide here, moving on, like I said, Derrick Rose already signed with the Knicks. There was some rumors that he was going to go back to the Chicago Bulls, but the Knicks brought him back. Probably the biggest thing on this slide, because we're kind of getting down to the not as important free agents, but Devontae Graham. Now, this is a guy who, he was a restricted free agent for the Charlotte Hornets. He was pretty much supposed to be like the second best player on the team behind no, never mind. He was supposed to be the best on the team. LaMelo Ball ended up being the best on the team, but Graham was supposed to be the guy. And I remember going into last season, I was like, oh man, now that we have Graham and Ball, like we need to find a way to trade Terry Rozier. And, but Terry Rozier really stepped up last year. He made me, I wouldn't say he made me like the owl tattoo, but, he made me a believer in him. So I'm glad that we stuck with him. Now, we managed to work a sign-and trade with the Pelicans. We traded away Graham and got the Pelicans first-round pick next year. Now, the problem with that is the first-round pick we got is lottery protected. Now, the Pelicans I think they can do it. I definitely think they have the talent to get to the playoffs, but we saw this last year where we all thought they were going to make the playoffs and they screwed it up. So this could end up being a bad decision for the Hornets. I think Devontae Graham, I know Zach actually had him going to the Jazz, which he would have fit really well with the Jazz had he gone there, being a perimeter-oriented player. I definitely think he helps the Pelicans. He can be that perimeter option, if they're really focusing on Zion, kind of like what Giannis has in Milwaukee. Like, if he can kick it out to Middleton or kick it out to someone to knock down a 3-pointer, like Graham will definitely do that for you. It's just I'm questioning kind of the logic behind the Hornets taking a lottery protected pick. I'm not the biggest fan of that, just because, like I said, given how the Pelicans kind of collapsed last year, it makes me not as excited about it. Because if it was from a team like like the Clippers or I'm trying to think of
like the Jazz
or the Jazz or someone like the Hawks or something that like a slightly lower level, like not a top seeded team, but like a team we know is going to make the playoffs most likely. Someone like that, I would have been completely happy with like a lottery protected pick because I'm confident they're not going to that we'll get the pick. But in this one, I'm not as confident. Which, if we don't end up getting it, then I'm really going to hate losing Devontae Graham because I think he's still a really good talent. I think he was just bogged down by injuries last year. But who knows? Time will only tell for Devontae Graham. But hopefully we made the right decision on that. Looking down here, I know the biggest thing for the Pelicans on here, Doug McDermott went to the Spurs, Caruso went to the Bulls, Olynyk went to the Pistons. Biggest thing on this slide for me is probably Josh Hart. We all have him going back to the Pelicans. I think it's crucial that they bring Josh Hart back. Like they really need to solidify that team and really get those pieces together. How crucial do you think it is for the Pelicans to bring Hart back?
Yeah, I think he's a key piece going for him, and plus, they traded for him as part of the deal when they gave away Anthony Davis, and Lonzo Ball was somebody they got in that trade, and they've already lost him now. And then if you lose Josh Hart too, it's like you're losing even more of those pieces that you got for AD. And then it's like, if they keep losing these pieces, and it's like, man, it's like you gave away AD for nothing, So, I mean, while Lonzo Ball is not my favorite player or anything, I mean, it's it still sucks for them to lose him, and then if they lose Josh Hart too, then it's like, dang, all they really have left would be like Brandon Ingram. So he can be a key piece for them going forward, so I think they should try to bring him back for sure.
Yep, and then finally moving on to the last slide here. Well, technically not the last slide. On the last slide, we have Bobby Portis. He already re-signed with the Bucks. I was maybe thinking he was going to go to the Jazz, but the Bucks brought him back, so I'm sure Bucks fans are happy. But Nicholas Bum went back to the LA Clippers, and Will Barton re-signed with the Nuggets. Now, Norman Powell, it's too bad I don't have Zach here to ask him how he feels about this, because Norman Powell got a huge deal from the Portland Trailblazers. So I'd be interested to know Zach's opinion on what he thinks about that deal. I know Eric and I are not fans of it, given how, I really don't think he's worth that, seeing as how I remember when we were talking about him in 2019 when he was on the Raptors, he wasn't even like really the sixth man. He was more like the eighth or ninth man on that team. So I don't know. It's, he's a good player and all, but he's not worth the contract he got.
Yeah, I think he's improved and everything. I think he's a good fit for that Blazers team, but 5 years, $90 million, like, God, it's crazy. I saw, like, just real quick comparison here, like, before we wrap this up, like, I saw that Nick Chubb of the Browns got, like, I believe it was, I don't know if you saw this, Connor, so, like, if you did, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was a 3-year, $37 million contract extension.
Yeah.
So a guy who is a key point of the Browns offense gets
one of the
3
best
years,
running backs in the
million.
league, arguably.
Yeah, top 5 running back, like top 10 at minimum, but could even be considered a top 5 running back in the NFL. Gets 3 years, $37 million. Kelly Olynyk just got a 3-year, $37 million contract today. Alex Caruso just got a 4-year, either $36 or $37 million contract today. Norman Powell just got a 5-year, $90 million deal. Think about this stuff. Like, it's just there's top stars like in the NFL not making $90 million. Like,
there's stupid money in the NBA.
Norman Powell is gonna get $90 million guaranteed dollars. It's just like mind-boggling to me, dude.
I know, it's crazy, all the ridiculous money that's involved in the NBA. So before we wrap this up, I guess the one person I want to touch on really quickly is Andre Drummond here. I have him going to the Celtics. Eric has him going to the Heat. Zach has him going to the Warriors. If there's one person left on this free agent list that I really hope the Charlotte Hornets try to go after, I really hope it's Andre Drummond for the right price. Now, I don't want him getting a Norman Powell type contract, like 5 years, $90 million, or a Gordon Hayward type contract, like 5 years, $120 million. I don't need any more of that in my life, Michael Jordan, please. But if we can get Andre Drummond for the right price, I really want the Hornets to go after him, because he can be another big man. He can be the starter while Kai Jones develops, and just really have, a board dominant big man, because Kai Jones really isn't that. He's a mobile big man. He's an offensive threat big man. Drummond is a board dominant big man. We really need someone like that on the team. So Charlotte Hornets, make it happen. Go get Andre Drummond, guys, for the right price. We have cap space. So, but that's going to wrap up this episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. I tried to do my best making an NBA episode, so hopefully it was worthwhile to watch and exciting. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at clutchcrewsport. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and be on the lookout for new episodes every Tuesday. So that's it for now, guys. And as always, for Zach, be clutch.
Peace.